Welcome back, friends, to Build a Lot Acres. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the monstrous, the infamous, the legendary John Deere 400 series. Stay tuned. It's a cold winter's night. We're up here in the barn loft, and we're going to bring you one heck of a video. All right, so to tell this incredible garden tractor tale, we have to go way back to the year 1975. Deere and Company were looking to add a rugged, larger framed, robust line of garden tractors, and they had a lot of stiff competition at this time. So take, for example, Boland's. They came out with a large frame garden tractor line in 1967 with the introduction of the 1250. And through the years, those models just kept getting bigger and better, more horsepower. And by 1973, they had the incredible HT20. Take a brand like Wheelhorse. 3 of the 4 Wheelhorse D-Series line of super garden tractors came out in the year 1974. That would have been the D160, D180, and D200. And then, of course, we have what we discussed in last week's video, which would be the MTD 990, which started in 1971, and it carried through many years, and many would consider that one of the best large frame garden tractors ever produced. And finally, we have, for competition, the Simplicity Power Max series of tractors. The 4040, the original Power Max, would have came out in 1972, and then the 4041, which was an upgraded, improved version, would have came out in 1973. So the point is, in the early to mid 70s, you had a lot of competition coming out and a lot of large frame garden tractors to compete with. So John Deere wanted a piece of that pie. So the idea with these larger frame tractors was to catch a new market. A lot of people had larger properties and estates, and they needed a little bit more capable machinery that was able to take care of larger properties, do bigger chores, and ultimately run bigger attachments. Enter the John Deere 400, the original of the John Deere 400 series, and this would have came out in 1975. Well, this would have been a pretty unique and groundbreaking tractor for John Deere. Previous to this 400, John Deere's flagship garden tractor would have been the model 140, which I have talked about in other videos. I talk about the 140 compared to the 318, compared to the 420 John Deere, which we're going to get into in a minute, but 3 of the best John Deere garden tractors ever made. So if you want to see that video, please click up above. So some of the features of this new model 400 would have been a 19.9 horsepower Kohler engine. It had a 2-speed transaxle, had a Sunstrand transmission, had 18 by 8.5 by 8 front tires, 26 by 12 by 12 rears, and it weighed in at about 975 pounds. The Model 400 was made from 1975 until 1983. Also featured a Category 0 3-point hitch. It had a 52-inch wheelbase, and it did offer a more rudimentary form of power steering. So as far as implements go for the 400, you can get a 60-inch mid-mount deck, you can get a 54-inch front blade, you can get a 46-inch single-stage snow blower, you can get a Model 20 loader, which was actually made by Brantley, and it had a 500-pound lift capacity, and that actually came with 3 bucket widths. You can get 40-inch, 48-inch, and 60-inch width buckets. Lastly would have been the Model 430 backhoe, which had a 6-foot digging depth. So quite a few implements for the Model 400, but as you're going to see in a little bit, there was something about these implements that you're going to want to know. So following in the bold footsteps of the revolutionary John Deere 400 would have been his big brother, the John Deere 420. The John Deere 420 would feature a 20 horsepower Onan power plant versus the 19.9 Kohler of the 400. And the John Deere 420 was made from 1983 up until 1991. Another upgrade in the 420 would have been a larger 6.5 gallon fuel tank to feed that hungry Canadian engine. And this would have been quite a bit bigger than the 4.5 gallon fuel tank of the John Deere 400. The John Deere 420 also offered true hydrostatic power steering. This would have been quite an improvement over the more rudimentary power steering that the 400 had, and it allowed the 420 to turn quite a bit sharper with a better turning radius than the 400. It would have been similar in dimensions to the 400, but it did weigh slightly more, tipping the scales at 993 pounds. Another big benefit of the 420 would have been a differential lock, which allowed you to get a lot more traction for those tough chores, whether you were snow blowing, maybe you were pulling logs, or maybe you were mowing side hills on an angle, on a slope. The last real big change for the 420 over the 400 would have came in the way of attachments. You could get a 60 or a 50-inch mowing deck. You get the 46-inch single stage snow thrower or the impressive 47-inch two-stage snow blower, which really chucked that snow a distance. And then, of course, you had the legendary Model 44 front-end loader, which replaced Model 20 of the 400. So different attachments, which is a big deal because these attachments will fit other John Deere 400 series tractors. And in fact, a lot of these you can use on smaller machines like the John Deere 300 series. So the 400 model had unique standalone attachments that only the 400 could use, which in my opinion really hurt the popularity of the Model 400 over the long run. Where the 420, the 430 can use a lot of the same implements and attachments as, like I said, the 318 and some of the other models, which really helped them stay popular and made it easier to get attachments into the future. So the next John Deere 400 series was a real monster. In fact, it was a diesel-powered 1,170-pound monster. That monster's name, the John Deere 430. So the John Deere 430 was made from 1984 up until 1992. The John Deere 430, like I said, weighed in an impressive 1,170 pounds, and it featured a 3-cylinder, 20-horsepower Yanmar diesel engine, and it was just an impressive machine all the way around. It again had a 6.5-gallon fuel tank, just like the gas 420, and it had the same 18 by 8.5 by 8 front tires and 26 by 12 by 12 rear tires, which I would say in my experience is the go-to standard tire sizes for super guide tractors. Had a category 0 3-point hitch, and the total dimensions would have been 84 inches long by 51.5 inches wide by 48.5 inches tall. So pretty good size tractor to say the least. Like the previous two John Deere 400 models that we just discussed, had a Sunstrand 2-range transmission. As far as attachments go, as I mentioned, it shared the same attachments as its baby brother, the John Deere 420. So it made it really handy. If you wanted to upgrade from the 420, let's say, to the 430, you could use all your same implements. You didn't have to buy a whole new set of implements for your new diesel-powered monster. So next on the horizon for the John Deere 400 series would have been the triplets, the 425, 445, and 455. The main differences being the 425 and 445 were gasoline powered, whereas the 455 was a diesel powered John Deere. They were all made from 1992 up until the year 2001. They all had a 6.5-gallon fuel tank and were similar in specifications to the earlier John Deeres. The weights varied depending on what model you got, because these were the first of the John Deere guide tractors you can get an all-wheel steer. Not all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, all-wheel steer. So all 4 tires could have power-assisted steering, which could really help in certain situations. And these were pretty revolutionary for John Deere because this is the first of their models offered such a feature. So that could really adjust the weight. So you could be anywhere from about 800 pounds up to 1,060 pounds, depending on whether you got gas or diesel, depending on whether you got 2-wheel steer or 4-wheel steer. So the 425 would feature a 20-horsepower Kawasaki V-twin 2-cylinder engine. The 445 would feature a 22-horsepower Kawasaki V-twin engine. And the 455 would feature a 22-horsepower Yanmar 3-cylinder diesel power plant. Transmissions were now changed to Tough Torque K91 instead of the Sunstrand, which all of the previous Model 400s would use. Attachments were a 48, 54, and 60-inch mower deck. You could get a 46-inch or 47-inch snowblower in either single stage or 2-stage, and a Model 40 front-end loader. So the model of loader would change. It's no longer the original Model 20 that the 400 had. It's not the Model 44 that the 420 and the 430 utilized. It's now the Model 40. So the last of the 400 series brothers is going to be the John Deere 415. Now I'm willing to bet there's a lot of people watching that probably have never heard of a John Deere 415. And that's because they were destined for the European market. They really were never designed or meant to be sold in the States. Although some of them have made their way over here, they were really destined for the European market. So the 415 was made from 1995 up until the year 2001. featured an 11.9 kW engine, which if you translate it would be a 16 horsepower engine, and that would have been a 3-cylinder Yanmar diesel. So it featured a Kankazi hydrostatic transmission, 50.4-inch wheelbase. It was 75 inches long, 45 inches wide, and 48 inches high. And it weighed in at 926 pounds. So as far as attachments go, offered 121 centimeter and 154 centimeter deck. If you're wondering what that is here in the US, that would be a 48 and a 54-inch deck. Like I said, keep in mind, these were designed to be sold in Europe, so a lot of the specs are given in the metric system. Another big change for this 415 model would have been its outboard disc brakes. So quite a bit different than the other John Deere 400 models. I'm willing to bet quite a few people haven't heard of it, but it was one of the John Deere 400 brothers, so we have to discuss it in today's video. So all told, the 400 series would have been made for a 26-year period from 1975 all the way up till 2001. And in my opinion, due to their rugged, square looks, their simple lines, and their quality features, they were perhaps one of the best John Deere garden tractor lines ever produced. I know they don't quite have all the bells and whistles of the newer X-Series John Deere garden tractors, but there's something magical about these big 400 series that really sits and resonates with a lot of users. I think it's because they were the first real super garden tractors that John Deere offered, and a lot of people grew up with these 400 series around the farm. Maybe their father had one, or their grandfather, or their uncle. They just remember using them and seeing them as a kid, remembering how big and rugged and powerful these 400s really were. So with all that said, we certainly hope you guys enjoyed today's video on the legendary, monstrous, impressive, infamous John Deere 400 series. So if you did enjoy today's video, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We have a whole lot of cool garden tractor content that you can check out. And until next time, have a good one, friends.